A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the Mid Morning Show. I am your host, Lilian Thomas. How are you doing? I hope your day is fantastic as ours right here in County 034, Kajiado County in Kitengela. We are doing well. How are you doing? First of all, let me start by apologizing for starting the show late. We had a little bit of challenges in the studio, but that is sorted. So we are getting into our discussion today and the show continues as usual. If you are watching us for the first time, kindly subscribe to our pages. On Facebook, we are at Farmers. On YouTube, we are at Farmers Media. Help us gain more subscribers on YouTube. So you just subscribe to our page, hit the notification bell. Every time we go live, you will always be notified. Every time we upload a video, you will always be notified. As we start our discussion right now, I want you to keep telling me where you're watching the show from, and you can keep making your contributions about the topic of discussion on our Facebook page at Farmers, on YouTube at Farmers Media. Just write your comments on my comment section, and I'll be looking at that in the second part of the show. So today I want us to talk about food prices on a global scale, but I want us to focus more on what is actually causing the increase in food crisis that we have right now. So last week, the Food Agricultural Organization, they always do a study each and every month of the food price indexes. So they said that we'll be having an increase in the food prices. And the funny thing that we have right now, the food price that we have, the food price index that we have in the month of April this year is actually the highest it has ever been since May 2014. Quite a while, right? So May 2014, we are in May 2021. That is like a 7 years difference. A very big difference. And the food prices are actually going higher day in, day out. So some people can accredit it to the fact that maybe it's because of COVID, but we really want to understand what is actually causing this increase in food prices. So let me just give you an illustration of how they really calculate the food prices. So the food prices is actually determined from an average of particular food commodities that people consume globally across different countries. So they look at sugar, vegetable oils, meat, dairy, and cereals. This is what they use to calculate the food price index. So the food price index is measured monthly. And monthly, it is measured as a change in the prices of the food commodities globally. And then in the month of April 2021, so the study was done before, it is usually done before 10th of every month. So in April, actually sugar was leading in the prices. The prices have gone very high. Sugar is leading in the prices. And globally, actually, people accessing food is actually becoming a problem, a very big problem. Don't forget that if people can't really afford, because the moment the food prices go high, most people can't afford food. Remember, we have people, especially right now in the developing countries, who live under $1 a day. So $1 a day in Kenyan shillings, it's more like 100 bob. Yes, 100 bob or less. So we have a family that actually lives on 100 bob a day, and yet we have food prices going high. I was trying to look at the packet of flour that we have. If you're buying a 2 kg packet of flour right now, you're buying it at around 120 or more, 120 shillings or more. That is $1 plus. And yet we have families that survive on $1 a day. So the food prices the increase in food prices is actually going to be a very big disadvantage to very many people, especially people in the developing countries. More so, let's talk about Africa, South America. People will be really struggling to be able to put food on their table. So we'll still be having the cases of hunger. Don't forget the cases of hunger. We always have around 750 million people sleeping hungry each day. If we have increasing food prices right now, this number is bound to go high. So we'll be having close to 1 million people sleeping hungry each day. The starvation crisis will increase. We'll be having more people in the developing countries having starvation crises. We have we will be having an increase in the food security in the countries. Actually, the first thing that I realized when I was looking at the food price index as from last year, for the past 10 months, it has been on a steady rise, like in an increase too, slowly by slowly by slowly. And you see, if we're looking at the past 10 months, it came after COVID 19. After COVID 19, the prices have been going high. The food prices are going high constantly, day in, day out, each month. And the interesting part about it is that we have food prices going high in terms of the prices, but again, is our production at the same level that it was? Because if we are looking at the past decade and right now, our production has really improved, not in terms of technology. Actually, in terms of technology, it has really improved. People are doing agriculture the right way, so we expect that we are actually producing more food. Why then do we have an increase in the food prices currently in the globe? Like globally, why are we having an increase in food prices? It's a discussion. I was looking at the discussion yesterday morning that Fiona and actually DJ Nara and Ashley were having right here in the studio, and they were discussing the impacts of the food prices. And you see, they talked about hunger, starvation, and remember, one of the SDG goals that we have, we are supposed to be getting to zero hunger by the time we're getting to 2030. Okay, by 2030 we are supposed to be at zero hunger. If we are to get at zero hunger, one, we have to be food secured. Okay, two, we have to be able to access food. Food must be accessible to every person, whether you are in the developing countries or in the developed countries. The food that is available should be nourishing to the people, because we have cases of undernourishment among people, like people don't get the correct nutrients of food that they should be getting. So we have all these things that should be playing into factor. But then again, how are we supposed to achieve this, yet the food prices are going high day in, day out? Right now we are at the highest point where we have ever been in history. Like from 2014, we've been having kind of steady prices, and then we are in 2021. The prices have literally hiked up and people are struggling. I am trying to imagine a scenario of someone who lives in Kibra. So let me use an example of Kibra. Kibra is among the largest slums we have in Africa. Someone living in Kibra. Unafanya kazi ya mjengo is too much. Let me not even talk about mjengo. Mjengo, you actually are paid around 300 bob a day. That is quite, you can manage to put food on your table. Some people have really minor jobs. You find someone is going for a kakibarua and you're being paid 100 bob a day. So you have your 100 bob, you're going back home, you have kids. Let me say you have 3 kids, for example. You have 3 kids, you have your 100 bob. At the end of the day, you are living in Nairobi. In Nairobi, you have to pay your rent, you have to pay for electricity, you have to pay for water, and you still need to put food on the table. And also remember, the kids need to go to school. What do you end up taking? What do you end up eating at the end of the day? Because if we have a packet of flour being sold at 120 shillings, that is $1 plus, and yet you are getting $1 at the end of the day, what are you supposed to be putting on the table? How many meals are you going to consume at the end of the day? You know, we have cases of families whereby we have a meal a day, right? So you are lucky if you are able to put 3 meals on your table a day, because they can't, it's not even a matter of accessibility to them. They can't really afford the food, or the food price is high. They can't really afford the food. In Africa, we are mainly consuming cereals. Let me say more specifically, most African countries consume a lot of maize. A lot of maize is used as a staple food in the African countries, and I know a larger part of South America, right? And then right now, the Food Agricultural Organization is actually predicting that we are bound to import more cereals into the continent by the end of the year. What's the problem? What's the problem? because we are consuming more maize, but we are bound to import more maize in order to feed the population that we have. Where do we have the disconnect? That's exactly what we will be looking at. You can keep sending me your feedback on Facebook. We are at a farmers. On YouTube we are at a farmers media. Just write your comments on my comment section and I'll be looking at that on the second part of the show. You can tell me, I don't know, where are you at? Maybe if you are from a different country, can you tell me your price ranges of sugar, flour, rice? Because those are the three basic things that I know we consume across Africa that we can really tell the prices. And if possible, if you know at what price are you buying an 90 kg bag of maize, just let me know on my comment section. And I'll be looking at that towards the second part of the show, okay? So we have like 45 countries have been predicted to be needing external assistance of food. This is usually facilitated by most NGOs. More profoundly, from the UN, I know the World Food Program. The World Food Program does a very good job of actually giving food assistance. And from these countries, do you know this thing that actually saddens me? It's the fact that Africa has a majority of the countries that needs this food. So we have around more than 20 countries who might need assistance with food. And these countries that we have include Burkina Faso, Burundi, Cape Verde, Cameroon, DRC, we have Chad, we have Djibouti, Eritrea, we have Kenya, we have Ethiopia, we have Lesotho, we have Tanzania, we have Uganda, we have Zambia, we have Nigeria, we have Zimbabwe. Like we have a majority of our countries right here who will be needing external assistance of food. I really want to understand what is it that we are doing wrong in Africa, because I really don't get it. Because I find that Africa is really arable. We have arable land. Our weather conditions are really good. We don't have cases of winter and all these things. Our weather conditions are really good. What is the problem? Is it that we are not producing enough food? Or rather, let us say we cannot afford our food in terms of poverty levels. We have high poverty levels, which is actually true because we are developing countries. Most of our countries are in the developing countries. We cannot afford food. We cannot afford food. The poverty levels are really high. So the moment the food prices are going high, we cannot be able to buy our food. That's what I just want to understand. What really can we do? What really can we do? What really can we accredit to the fact that we are actually not able to buy our food? We can't access food. Why are the food prices going high day in, day out? You see, when we are looking at the food prices, we are looking at all these things that I've mentioned, which is cereals, oil, vegetable oils, dairy, meat, and sugar. And again, Food Agricultural Organization says we are bound to produce more cereals this year. But you know what the disconnect is? We are producing more cereals, but most of the cereals that are expected to be produced is wheat. We are bound to produce more wheat this year than any other year. But don't forget, most of the developing countries, most of let me talk about Africa, people consume more maize than wheat. So as much as we are producing more wheat, which will be produced on a global scale, like we are expected to produce 785 million tons. That is a lot. But how many people are actually consuming wheat as a staple food? More people are actually consuming maize as a staple food. Actually, which reminds me, I think I should find the post. It reminds me, yesterday on our Facebook page, Africa Farmers Club, I remember someone was having a discussion. So we had one of our good friends, an agronomist, he went and posted something and he was talking about, I think I just need to find the particular post and read it for you. So he went and posted, he was actually marketing himself and what he does, and he was advising against people using actually planting maize, and he was advising people to plant other other food, like more of plant capsicum, that is pili pili hoho, or maybe do tomatoes, fancy things. And he was discouraging people from actually planting maize. And I remember it was a very big discussion, and people were actually, it was more of an, I felt like it was an argument. People really didn't understand why he was actually telling people not to plant maize, and yet we consume a lot of maize in the country. I don't think I can really find the post right now, but maybe I'll find it after the break, and I'll read the particular comments that I observed that really intrigued me from some of our members, because they were in a frenzy, like completely, because he was advising against planting maize, and people went on a rage, actually complaining about how it depends on how you do your maize production. You remember we had a discussion last week about maize, and we were asking why is it that we are not getting enough yields about maize, okay? And people were like, because we don't have agronomic advice, we have less extension services, or our soils are poor. We had all these reasons, but then again, we still have more people. Okay, these reasons, if they are to be sorted out, maybe we will increase our production of maize. Okay, fine, yeah, it will. But then again, we have people discouraging us from planting maize, and they are talking about actually planting, diversifying, and doing different crops, more so horticultural crops. But then again, I am looking at Africa. Are you going to consume the horticultural crops alone? Because you can't actually only have vegetables for food. You need the maize, you need all these things to come into play if you really need to. So, I want to find a very interesting topic that I read right here. We had one Mike Azingale who was asking how many people consume maize as compared to capsicum. Okay, if you do your maize planting very well, you will get a good amount of maize bags. But you are not supposed to be discouraging people from planting maize, because it is what we consume a lot. I don't know what you think about it. I really want to understand. I don't know what you think about it. Is it valid if we are actually advising people not to plant maize, yet in Africa we rely on maize as our staple food, but then we have our prices going high? And I want to know, how much are you buying a 90 kg bag of maize right now? And how much were you buying it last year? How much were you buying a 90 kg bag of maize last year? How much are you buying it as at now? Remember, when the food prices go high, we have people who benefit, we have people who don't benefit. Producers, if you are producing food, you are in the agriculture industry, you are more bound to benefit, because higher food prices means you're getting more money. If you're going to be selling a cabbage at 50 bob in the market, you are getting more money. But today, I just don't even want to talk about the producers. Now, let's talk about the local consumer. If the local consumer is going to be buying food at 50, do you know a scenario whereby you have someone spending a majority part of their income actually on food? Yes, that's what happens. When you have higher food prices going high, the person who's being affected is the local consumer. The local consumer will be straining, because you're spending more money on food. If I was buying of maize a kg of maize flour at 60 shillings, and then the prices go high and I have to be paying an extra 70, an extra, and I will be paying 70, so that's an extra 10 shillings. An extra 10 shillings at the end of the week is 70 shillings. 70 shillings is food for one day, okay? So that is like a packet of flour for one day, which is really inconvenient, considering that the prices go high, and then maybe, just maybe, most likely, your salary is the same, your income is the same. So if you were getting, let's say, 12,000 shillings, that is the lowest that people should be getting the public service in Kenya. So you are getting around 12,000 shillings. And then you used to spend around 5,000 on food. And the prices go high. At the end of the month, you are spending around 7,000 to 8,000 at the end of the period. To you, it is a disadvantage. To the farmer, it is a very, very big advantage. But when you look at the markets that we have and the prices that we have in the country and globally, it affects a lot of things. First, it affects how people can afford the food. If we have a packet of maize flour going at 140 shillings, and we have people who are actually earning 100 shillings at the end of the day, you find most of these people cannot afford to buy this packet of flour. So it really plays with the affordability case of people. Most people will not be able to afford the food because of the prices. We have another issue of hunger. If people are not able to afford food, they are bound to sleep hungry, to skip some meals. The hunger cases go high, the starvation cases go high. And I keep saying over and over again right here, if there's something that disturbs me, by the way, mimi ni hunger cases. Hunger cases, starvation cases, the crises that are happening in the country and globally really gets to my neck. I always feel like something should be done to elevate that, because I imagine a 3-year old didn't have breakfast, they didn't have lunch, they only had water, and then at the end of the day, they still don't have a meal. Do you guys know how hard it is to actually sleep on an empty stomach? Have you tried sleeping on an empty stomach? You cannot, you cannot even catch some sleep, not even for some 10 minutes. You cannot catch for some. Personally, when I am hungry, my stomach aches. My stomach aches. There's nothing, you cannot convince me anything unless I have food on my table. And I am a grown up. 20 something? Yes, ladies never say their age, so nah. 20 something years old. And I am imagining a child, 3 to 5 years old. If personally I feel pain when I am hungry, what about a 3-year-old? What about a 5-year-old? And this is what the increasing food prices does. It affects the affordability, it affects the hunger cases we have in the country. So let's imagine now that we have food prices going high. Imagine someone in Trukana. Is it the right example to use? Yeah, let me use an example of a person in Trukana. You don't have any source of income. You're not working, okay? You're not working. And whatever you do, maybe most of these people, I know they sell their livestock. That's the only way they get money. But you're selling your livestock, but at the same time, the amount of money you are supposed to be spending on buying food is a lot. Is a lot. The hunger cases will increase. We will have more cases that we are always hearing from the northern parts of Kenya, increasing, going high day in, day out. And also, if you can't really be able to buy the food that you're supposed to be buying to consume, and you find people resort to cheaper options. You know, the way you were taught how you are supposed to consume a balanced diet, right? A balanced diet consists of carbohydrates, proteins, and vegetables. So for carbohydrates, we can say something like maize. So that is ugali for most people in Kenya. And then vegetables, maybe you have skuma wiki, or you have spinach, or you have the traditional vegetables, e.g. managu. And then for the proteins, maybe you have meats. That is like a balanced diet. In a day, you're supposed to be eating a balanced diet. But you find these people cannot be able to do that. I have visited a family whereby you cannot afford food, and the best they can do is boil a cup of rice and make some, we call it strong tea. Strong tea doesn't have milk. Strong tea is literally hot water, tea leaves, and sugar. That is strong tea. If you know it, if you can associate, if you can relate, yes. So we have a family that takes a rice and strong tea each single day. That is what they have for supper. When will they ever get the nutrients that they need? When will they ever get a balanced diet? It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in most cases. Most families are actually struggling with that. So you find the moment you're not getting the right diet, especially for kids, you tend to be undernourished. Now we start having cases of kwashiako in babies because they don't have enough proteins. We have cases of marasmus because they are not having enough food at all. And it's something like we really have to battle, because now if the children are undernourished, their immunity is weak, okay? Their immunity is not okay. These are sick kids. How do you expect sick kids to become productive by the time they are growing up? Even for a normal older person, you are undernourished, your productivity is bound to be affected because you're not getting the right nutrients that you need. Actually, another statistic I saw, we have around 862 million people globally having inadequate nourishment, meaning we have 862 million people undernourished. Undernourished meaning they have less of proteins, less of vitamins, less of carbohydrates, all these things. But then again, what is happening? What is happening in the world today? What is happening in the world today? Why are the food prices going high? What is causing the food prices to go high? Oh, one last thing before we go on a break. The cost of food in Kenya right now has increased by 6.42% in the month of April 2021. Most Kenyans, remember, were laid off because of COVID. So these people are not working. The food prices have gone up. 6.6% is like a big percent, a very big percent. And considering that we have a majority of people actually that are not employed, mainly because there was COVID, and maybe you are working in the hotel industry, you were laid off, or rather, maybe your boss decided, I have a lot of things like the economics has a balance because of the crisis we have and the pandemic we have. So they just needed to get rid of some people. They got rid of some people. So imagine this person at home, you don't have work, and then you have food prices going high by 6.42% right now in Kenya. How are you supposed to survive, especially in Nairobi? Wow. Maisha Nairobi by the way ni ngumu. People always say Nairobi ni shamba la mawe. Ni shamba la mawe. That is literally it. We want to go on a very short break, but when we come back, we will try and look at the reasons, the causes actually that are making, what is actually making the food prices to increase. So we'll be looking at the causes of increase in food prices. You can keep sending me your comments on Facebook. We are at A Farmers. On YouTube, we are at A Farmers Media. Na kama kawaida, we'll be coming back with the quote of the day, katikati, and I'll be looking at your comments. So keep talking to me. We are going on a short break. We will be back in a few.
Agriculture is the art and science of cultivating the soil, growing crops, and raising livestock. Agriculture provides most of the world's food and fabrics. It is not only a source of food and income, but also creates employment opportunities for many people in the world. Over 1 billion people worldwide work in agriculture, generating 2.4 trillion for the global economy. The global impact of farming on the environment is revealed that 40% of the Earth's land is now given over to agriculture. Agricultural development is one of the most powerful tools to end extreme poverty, boost shared prosperity, and feed a projected 9.7 billion people by 2050. And we, the Our Farmers Media, roll the carpet for you as we welcome you to our thrilling farm visits to different farmers that educate and inspire you in different sectors in agriculture. Catch us also on our shows on all our social media platforms as we bring you educative and informative information that will help you learn and guide you on your agriculture journey to success. Our farmers attain knowledge and grow profits. Are you a farmer facing challenges in your farm? Pests, diseases, or even unsatisfactory produce? Worry no more. The solution is here. Join us every Tuesday on Diagnostic Tuesday, where we talk about various issues affecting agriculture and interacting with experts with knowledge in different sectors of agriculture to provide you with appropriate solutions, giving hope to farmers to attain better yields, to achieve financial success and development. Our farmers attain knowledge and grow profits.
Welcome back. This is the Mid Morning Show. I am your host, Lilian Thomas. How are you doing? How fantastic is your day? By the way, I work with very amazing people. Did I mention that? I should mention that. I work with amazing people, very good company. That aside, if you have just joined us, kindly subscribe to our pages on Facebook. We are at Farmers on YouTube. We are at Farmers Media, and you can tell me where you're watching the show from and write your comments on my comment section on Facebook, and I'll be looking at that in a few. So today we have been talking about food prices, and the food prices have really gone high. So we want to really understand what is actually causing the rise in the food prices and what can we do? What can we do to try and make sure that we don't have a steady increase in food prices? But before we get into that, kama kawaida, We start with the quote of the day. Tukitokanga break tunaanzanga na quote of the day. That's what we are going to be looking at right now. And then we'll get back into our discussion about increasing food prices. So our quote today says, it's during our darkest moments that we must focus to see the light. It is during our darkest moments that we must focus to see the light. This depends on your interpretation, but my interpretation is this. You see, when everything is not working and things are just not going the way you had planned, and you are caught in some kataitka corners, that kataitka corner, you don't even know what to hope for tomorrow. You don't know what you're looking forward to tomorrow. Okay? That is the only time that you are supposed to be focusing to try and see like a positive thing out of it. Kuna kwanga, there are times when you are surrounded with too much going on, putting pressure on you, but you have to look above it and try to see something positive out of it. So you've had cases when things are not working your way, but at the end of the period you never know why things had to happen the way they happen. So in spite of everything happening, you have to be staying positive and try to see the positive thing out of the situation you are in, even if it is negative. Talking of that, anyway, we'll be looking into something about related to that at the end of the show. But I want us to get back into the discussion we were having about increasing food prices globally. So we've said that it is the highest that we've had since May 2014. Right now, we have the highest food prices since May 2014. So that is like 7 years down the line, okay? The food price index has gotten to its highest. When we look at the value of maize has been on its highest since May 2013. This is the highest it has gotten into. We have several countries in Africa right now that are actually being predicted that they might need external food assistance. Most of the African countries, and among these countries, we have Kenya, we have Ethiopia, we have Uganda, Tanzania, Nigeria, Zambia, Zimbabwe. A lot of the countries are expecting to be like, wasaidiwe enough food because maybe they don't have enough food, or most of the people can't afford food, and these people will be starving and will be having hunger crisis. So we need to be like helping them access food. We have the food price increase at 6.42% in Kenya as at last month. We are in the month of May. As at April, we had 6.42 increase in the food prices. But what is actually the cause of these food prices? Is it the fact that we had COVID that actually made us to have an increase in the food prices? Because honestly, if we are to think about COVID really affected, because before we really adjusted to it, right now it's been more than a whole year. People are really reshaping and trying to adjust to the conditions we have right now. I remember listening to someone and she said, this is our new normal. This is what we are supposed to be adjusting to. People are really trying to take shape into that. But before that, a lot was affected. You remember when we were having the lockdowns and we had cessation of movements and the prices of things were skyrocketing because transport cost was getting difficult. Trying to access different places was actually becoming a problem. So COVID could be, it was a major contributor, con- because since we have like it has been increasing for the past 10 months, the food price index has been going high for the past like 10 months. So COVID can be a major contributor, considering after it happened and then all the food prices started going high. And then remember, at that point, we had a lot of people losing their jobs. We had a lot of people not going to work because of the health situation. People weren't required to be going outside, keeping social distance and stuff. So most people were staying at home. And because the economic times were getting hard, most people were being laid off. People are being laid off, and you find that even the production cost of most things was really going high. If you have the production cost of most things going high, you find that actually the prices of everything tend to go high. If everything goes high and the production cost is high, you find actually you have less people producing, more people withdraw from producing. So you find that the demand is high, the supply is little. If the demand and the supply don't match up, one of the person has to be constrained. If the demand is very high and the supply is kidogo, the prices are bound to go high, very, very high. But what other factors really cause this increase in world food prices? So let's start, because we're talking about agriculture, we are talking about food. In order to produce food, especially in, let me talk about developing countries, so more so in Africa, because I feel like I talk to Africans a lot. When we are producing food in Africa, we are actually working with the weather more of, we practice rain-fed farming. 95% of sub-Sahara Africa practices rain-fed farming, okay? So if we are producing food, we need to depend on the weather. But right now, in the previous decade, we've had very, very high cases of the weather shifting. The climate has been shifting from this end to the other end. We have been having extreme of conditions, either it's drought, it is floods, everything is just not favoring food production as at now. The climate doesn't really, because it is very unpredictable. At some point, I think actually this year we are looking at the onset of rains. The rains are supposed to have started by maybe early March. The rains began in late March towards April, and in some parts of the country actually they had not even begun. They just began in May. So you find the food production is really, really constrained at some point. It is really affected, because for you to do food production, you need to focus on the weather for most Africans and for most people in the developing countries. But if the climate is shifting from this end to the other end, the food production is affected. Either we are actually producing less food, or we have more people withdrawing from producing food because of the unpredictability of the weather. If we have floods or we have droughts, the food that we produce at the end of the period will be less. Because if we have floods, most crops might be washed away, we might not harvest as much. Droughts, we produce less food. We are producing less food, and yet we have a population that needs to be fed. It creates an imbalance, like the supply will be little, the demand that is expected from the population and from the people in the country will be really high. The supply and the demand does not balance. If the supply and the demand is not balancing, let's be honest, people are bound to take advantage of it. If I am a producer and I feel like this thing is really needed, it is really needed, it is on demand, and not most people have it, I will set a price so high, because you have no other option but buy it at that price, okay? So the prices will be set very, very high. And here you're looking at the conditions they really had to withstand in order for them to do the food production. They really strained. They are actually even more of compensating for it. So you find they are setting a price because either they strained so much to do their food production, or rather because whatever they have is little in the market, the supply is kidogo, and the demand is really high. And as a normal person would want to make money. And if you see something that can help you make money, like hiking prices because people have no other option, people need to buy food at this particular price. Why not? Why not? If I am coming to the market and I think people need a lot of waru, and normally a bucket of waru maybe goes at 250, and I know the waru farmers that we have right now won't produce the enough waru that we have, I'll come to the market and sell the waru at 400 per packet. And there's nothing you can do, by the way. You will either buy the waru or let it be. So the increase in food prices is actually caused a lot by the climate change. The climate change is really affecting the food production more so in the African continent. because drought actually makes us produce less food. If we have less food, the little food that we have will be sold at very high prices, unexpected, uncalled for, unwanted, like hi-fi, but it will happen because the climate has really shifted. Also, the climate change is making more people withdraw from farming. Sometimes you see it and you're like, I can't afford to do more of the commercial farming where I have to be using irrigation and I have drip lines in my farm because it is a lot of work. And because I know I will farm and maybe floods will come, or I will farm and then drought happens, and then at the end of the period, I won't have as much to do with the produce I have. I'd rather not do farming. This plot of shamba, I'd use it for anything else. Which brings me to our second point, which I think is the cause of the increase in food prices. Because me, I feel like the food production pia ni kidogo at this rate. Right now we have the land use. A lot of land is not being used for agriculture. Fine, we have land being used for agriculture. But right now, napigange sabu, someone will sit down and will be like, this plot of land of mine, instead of me doing farming, no, let's connect it with the climate change. Because the climate is shifting, it is really unpredictable. I really don't know how much I can make from these. I am not very, very sure. Okay, if I am not very very sure of what I can earn from this will be my logic, this will be my thinking. What if I used for this plot of land to do something else with it, instead of me doing farming with my plot of land? What if I put up houses and rent them out and people pay me rent for a whole lifetime? I'll be making a living out of it. So you find that most people are actually switching the land use. Most people are switching the land use from doing agricultural production to other things. I saw it somewhere actually. Most people are even switching it to using it for doing biofuel production instead of doing agricultural production, mainly because maybe the factors you have are not favoring you. The prices you have in the market, maybe you don't feel are good enough, maybe you're not making enough returns from your agricultural production, or maybe because the weather imekuwa tricky kidogo na huoni ukiafford hizo vitu zingine that you need to mitigate the climate change. So you opt for an easier option, switching land use, which actually reminds me again. Do you actually realize we have a lot of towns cropping up, even in places where agricultural production has been done? Everywhere you go right now is a small town. It is a town. It is doing something. It is like kuna kitu tu inaendelea. There's always something going on in these small towns that we have. We have more land being put into urbanization. More land has shifted into that. If we have more land shifting into that, and the land that we have is less, the food being produced in the country will be less. Food being produced in the globe will be less. And so, if we have less food, kama kawaida, prices huko juu. Whoever can afford, let them afford. Whoever can't afford, it is okay. You starve, you go hungry, and that is it about life. And then you see the kind of production we really do in Africa as a whole. So, Africa as a whole, as a continent, and most developing countries, we rely on land. Land is our major factor of production. But then again, we have more land being used for something else. We are using it for schools, we are using it for urbanization. We have really shifted the work of land. We have less land under production. And also, here, people are not accessing some other factors of production, such as water. And you see, water is a big factor into doing production. So if people are finding water to be unavailable to them, their agricultural production will be affected. These are actually two factors that I feel once they are restricted, even kidogo, everything is going haywire. Kabisa, everything is just going haywire. If you don't have land, if you don't have water for production, there's no farming you're doing. Most in Africa. In Africa, we do most of our production in the land. Soil, kama kawaida, lazima tukue tu na shamba. Because we are using less of the technologies we have. No, not like we are using less of it because we don't know, but maybe because there is a culture that has been around, and then the technological advancement hasn't gotten to that level. So we haven't gotten to the point whereby we are doing more of hydroponics and all these other things, which I think is the major strain, because we are relying on soil in order for us to actually make something out of our production. If we are relying on soil and water and these things become inaccessible to most people, it becomes a problem. We produce less food. Less food means we are actually going to be buying food at a very high rate because we have less food in the market. People are taking advantage of the conditions we have in the market. So kama kawaida tu, prices zitaenda juu and there's nothing you can do about it. I also try to think about something else about our population. We have an increasing population. The world population right now is at 7 billion. Yes, 7 billion. By 2050, we will be having 9 billion people in the world. This population that we have, they need somewhere to settle at, okay? They need somewhere to settle in. And so, meaning most land, instead of doing agricultural production, sorry, what? Instead of doing agricultural production, we are actually using the land for these people to settle and do other activities. And also, because the population is really high and the food being produced, the farmers, let's say the farmers are constant. The farmers are constant. We have a constant X or Y, X constant. We have a constant X factor. And then we have an increasing population day in, day out. Right now in Kenya, we are around 47 million or more. By the time we're getting to 2030, wow, we are above 50 million mark. Increasing population day in, day out. Yet the number of producers in the agriculture industry are at a constant X factor. This constant X factor and this increasing population, how do we balance the two? Because you find that these producers keep producing at the same amount they were producing, but the number of people we need to be feeding is higher, meaning it creates again another imbalance in the demand and supply. So the demand is high, the supply is lower. The suppliers put their prices to be high. Yes, that's the correct thing. Oh, yes, I did demand and supply in business as a course, I think. Yes, so you find the demand and the supply doesn't balance. The moment the demand and the supply does not balance, you are bound to be having skyrocketing prices in the market. Also, we try to look at, because on a global scale, transportation peer is an issue. You can bring an issue of transportation. If people are having a hard time trying to transport their food to the markets and getting to the consumers, you are spending more on the traveling logistics of trying to get food to this other end. You have to compensate in one way or another and get your returns back, because anyway, who wants to be making losses along the way? If I spent around 2,000 for me to transport my produce to the market, I have to make sure what I am gaining back my transport and I am making profit on top of it. So high transport costs are bound to make the prices go high. If we have high transport costs, we are bound to have high food prices in the market. And also we have a thing of importation and exportation duties. You find some countries have really set their duties to be very high. So you find trying to import produce into the country, maybe we say, you see the way I've said, we are bound to be importing more cereals into Africa this year. If we are importing more cereals into the country and you find that the duties are really high, when the food gets into the country, it has to compensate for the high exportation and importation duties. So you find the prices are really, really high. And that's why we are having this issue of high food prices in the globe as at now. And it has been on a steady rise for the past 10 months. And it is at its highest right now since 2014, May 2014. So we've discussed about the causes. We've actually tried to understand what the food prices is about, how the food price index works, what statistics we have looked at the causes of the increase in world food prices. We are going to be going on a short break. When we come back, we'll be coming back on trying to see what can we do to see that we are stabilizing the food prices in the globe, and also we'll be coming back with the COVID updates as we wrap up the show. We're taking a short break. We will be back in a few.
highly nutritious root vegetable. The beetroot is the top proportion of a beet plant. It is one of the many varieties of the genus Beta vulgaris, all of which are mostly grown for their edible taproots and leaves. Beetroot is a root crop that takes approximately 3 to 4 months to mature. Beetroot is a fairly easy crop to grow as long as the soil is well cultivated prior to planting. Beetroots do not enjoy wet, boggy or shady soils. Beetroot can be sown in trays and transplanted when the seedlings have two true leaves. Plant in full sun, space seedlings 10 to 15 centimeters apart, and rows 20 centimeters to 30 centimeters apart so they have room to grow. Beetroots are also ideal for containers or raised beds. Beetroots will happily thrive in small areas as long as there is at least 20 centimeters depth of soil. Beetroot has been used not only for food but also for treatment for numerous conditions.
Welcome back to the Mid Morning Show. I am your host, Lillian Thomas. It is 25 minutes past 1 o'clock. The lunchtime. The lunchtime. So we need to wrap up these. We go for lunch, and then Conrad Kibe will be coming in for the Farm Drive Show. Najamuli Miss Jana, but he'll be coming in at 3 p.m. for the Farm Drive Show, and he will be keeping you company. Hey, Hadi 5. But he's good company anyway, so you will be having a good time. So today we're looking at the food prices and the increase in food prices, more specifically the causes of increase in world food prices. Okay, if we have looked at what actually food prices is, what the food price index is, how does it work, how does it really affect the people, and we've tried to look at the causes of the increase in the world food prices. And before that, I will remind you the quote of the day, even as we wrap up, because I want us to wrap up. So we are just going to be looking at that small thing and do the COVID updates and finish this thing happy. So our quote today says, it is it is during our darkest moments that we need to focus to see the light. It is during our darkest moments that we need to focus to see the light. Unaona venye sometimes something happens and you are busy lamenting, why has this happened, why this, or why that. Have you ever sat down and thought of it? Maybe it happened because maybe I need to get to greater heights. Have you, maybe you have a case of you have been laid off from work, sawa? So you have been laid off from work and then umeletewa letter So we don't need your services as from next week, okay? And you are trying to think, the first thing that is like your darkest moment. You'll be sitting down and you're trying to think, you're like, Kai, where has it happened? Now, what am I supposed to be doing? Aki, my life is going to be a mess. Now I am miserable, and all these things. And then you'll beat yourself about it because you are a human being and you are about to do that. But in such a situation, and maybe you sit down and think, maybe this has happened because I need to be going to greater heights. Maybe there's something bigger and better for me out here as compared to where I am at right now. There's something always bigger and better out there compared to wherever you are at your current position. So, at our darkest moments, it is during our darkest moments that we need to focus and see the light. It is during our darkest moments that we need to focus and see the light. Like, even in that very hard time, always try to see something positive in it. Always try to see something positive in it, something good about it. I know we are human beings and we are bound to be pessimistic. Our first reaction is always negative, but always try to see a positive thing out of your negative situation. Talking of negative situations, the world is in a crisis in the increased food prices that have been increasing in the past 10 months. The past 10 months, we've had a steady increase in the food prices. And we have looked at what are the things that could actually be causing actually the increase in food prices. And we've talked about climate change, we've talked about the population, we've also looked at the land use switch, and also the decreasing land and water availability. And also we have high energy prices, which I might have failed to mention. High energy prices, you find that the energy prices, the crude oil is really expensive, which is a raw product of most of the things that we need to produce. So you find that the processed foods will tend to be very high because of the high energy prices that we have. But what then again can we do to try and make sure that these increase in food prices are not reoccurring out here? Because I have realized most of the things that we have, it's either the food production is kidogo, it is little, or the factors we have surrounding the food production are actually what are making it a mess. So we can start by, maybe there's something that DJ Nara said yesterday and Ashley Marion. They said if we increase the number of people who are producing food, so we did more of our food production. Literally, like, everyone tried to do their food production. See, like the small kitchen yard you have, the small kitchen garden, making good use of it to do your production. You use it to do your production, you increase the food we have in the market. I'll always say no land is too small for farming. No land is too small for farming. Even like you see where I am seated in the studio, like this small piece of nini hivi, I can grow my 2 vegetables, and that is actually contributing to increased food production. If every person did that, I always say small efforts make up one big thing. A very small effort by you, by me as a farmer, by you as my neighbor, by you as my friend, it makes up one big thing that is favoring all of us. If we all got into food production, it would help. Also, the governments looking at the exportation and importation duties that they put, if they adjust them and they are favorable, even importing food will not be as expensive. Importing food to the country will not be as expensive. So we will be selling food at reasonable prices in the country. We really need to try and make sure that we are getting more people to accessing food. We are getting more people to accessing food. So we need to look at all these factors, increase the food production by either having everyone doing farming as their place, and also reduce the importation cost, the importation and exportation duties that we tag on our countries. Pia, the government can always incentives to get more people into farming in order to increase food production. We keep talking about how you need to convince someone, make agriculture look really good. Make agriculture look sexier. Make it like it's something I'd want to do. We need to get to that point. Make it something that I'd be convinced if you told me get into agriculture, the way you portray it, it looks nice. It looks good. It's something that can be doable, you know? You need to convince people, make it very doable for them that they will actually want to get into agriculture. Give them good incentives. You see, if you tell me, get into agriculture and we subsidize this on you, we do this on you, definitely I will get into agriculture because whatever incentives you're giving me are making sense. So the incentives that the government is actually giving calls for a lot. The government or NGOs that are working out here with the government. I don't know what other thing that you think can be done in order to reduce the food prices that we have. Maybe we can try and improve the transporting logistics that our producers have to undergo through, our traveling logistics. Make our roads, improve our infrastructures, ensure that they are very good, very passable, making it very easier for the producer to get to to the market and sell their produce. And maybe when they get to the market, they won't price as a high as high prices as they are doing right now. And always climate smart agriculture kama kawaida, it's a show I did, a whole show on climate smart agriculture. If you missed it, just go back to our collection of videos. You will find it on the breakfast show. It's a show I did, and get to learn about climate smart agriculture and what you need to be doing in climate smart agriculture to ensure that you are producing food even with the shifting climate. This is where we are going to be wrapping up our discussion today. But before I leave the studio, so let me just do for you the COVID updates in the country right now in Kenya. And we have to remember we've had COVID for more than a year right now. COVID has been with us, it has affected us. Even right now that we are talking about the increasing food prices, we can always talk about it because of COVID 19. So we need to get the levels going lower, the positive cases going lower, in order for everything to get back to running as usual. So, as at yesterday, the positive cases in Kenya were at 66 out of a sample size of 1,833. The positivity rate is at 3.6%. The recoveries are at 1,737, and the deaths are at 12. I am really impressed. Honestly, I am really impressed. If we are at a positivity rate of 3.6%, I am really impressed. We are slowly getting to 1%, 0%. You see the positivity rate? Ensure that we're not spreading the virus even further. I am really impressed because we were so stuck at 10 to 16%. Right now, we are at 3.6%. Let me say, I am really impressed. But remember, we are here today because we have been keeping the precautionary measures that our governments have given us and the World Health Organization. And I will remind you again, as you go outside, remember, if you are going to a public place, put on your mask, let it cover your nose and mouth. Remember to wash your hands as regularly as possible. If you cannot, sanitize. And also keep social distance whenever you are in public places. Social distance, very, very important whenever you are in public places. Sawa sawa? Yes. This is where I am wrapping up the show. But kama kawaida, Conrad Kibe will be coming in for the Farm Drive show at 3 to 5 p.m. And tomorrow morning we'll be having DJ Nara and Ashley Marion in the studio for the breakfast show. You don't want to miss any of our episodes that we have lined up for you. Very interesting things that we are doing right here at our farmers, where we help you attain knowledge so that you can grow your profits. As I conclude, I always remind you, be kind to everyone you meet on the way. If you have an opportunity to help someone, and fantastic people look like you, so make sure you are achieving amazing things. Until tomorrow, it is a goodbye from me. Have a good day.